Hey, happy Sunday. Let's go ahead and pick up in Esther 2:15 through 18 today. Now, when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go into the king, she required nothing but what Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all that looked upon her. So let's start with Esther's turn. How long did Esther wait until it was her time, her moment to go into the king? Well, if we go back to verse 12, we realize that was 1 year, that after 1 year of being purified, of probably getting chemical peels, frankly, acid baths, everything to make them look prettier, right? Moments in the sun, foods that like maybe had olive oil, nuts, things that would make like their skin look really good. Then it was her time to go into the king. And what we're going to find is that when you go in, that we've learned that you can take whatever you want. The king will grant you whatever jewelry, properties, anything that you want. And for a long time, that's what's been going on. These women have been going in, and frankly, that's your shot, right? So you take all the stuff you want to keep into that night with the king. And so in all that in mind, right, Esther doesn't ask for anything. Now, I want to point out, this is key about Esther, but it's also key about women of God, right? It isn't that she doesn't accept that which was given, right? She receives everything that Haggai really said to give, right? But she also doesn't ask for any more. And I think that's key to what comes next, because when you think about it, King Ahasuerus has seen woman after woman after woman, and each one of them is going to have a certain set of objects that they all have. And then they're going to have a bunch of stuff in abundance in addition to that they've asked for. So when Esther enters into that chamber, she's going to enter in with just that set. And you have to imagine that this man isn't looking for a concubine. He's looking for a queen. And so when someone comes in and what they show up with is what God has given them, what they have received from him, then that's going to make a difference. That's the first thing that, to me, is going to make Esther stand out to us. The other thing that I want to point out is that very last verse of 15, where it says, Esther obtained favor in the sight of all of all them that looked upon her. Now that's all. So if you're a woman, right, I can imagine that it's easy to have men desire you, right? Esther was one of the most beautiful women in the Bible. So clearly men desired her. But to have other women like you, to have women want to be your friend, right? Men are so accomplishment based, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit with Ahasuerus here in a moment. And women are relationship based. They're the caretakers, right? They want to get into the day-to-day details of your life. They want to talk. They want to work things out. They really want to foster these relationships. So Esther did that among other beautiful women, other women who were coveting the same position that she was in line for. That's impressive. And I can't even really speak to that. But if you're a woman, to know that other women honor you and want to respect you and be your friend when you're so beautiful and have all these great qualities, I think that's pretty impressive onto who she is. So let's go on to the next verse in 16. So Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus and into his royal house in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. But let's back up just a little bit there, right? Because here we have a man who once threw this lavish drunk party, right? This handsome Persian like king, and he was it, right? And he's had women after women, and that didn't just start with this trial, let's be honest. Like, it's always gone on for him. But all of a sudden, the Hebrew words where we talk about love and kindness in this verse, in verse 17, it actually implies respect, honor, that it may not have been the long-lasting marriage relationship that he and she might find, but I will tell you this: he loved her. And I just talked about men and accomplishment, right? Well, you'll find that men can achieve a lot in their 20s and 30s, and as years go by, it's the 7th year of his reign, you get older, right? Particularly when you cross that threshold from the 30s to your 40s. I think guys know this. You start to see accomplishment, which is what we really thrive on, right? We don't get into the day-to-day details. not our real strength. We stand back, we watch, and we're protectors and warriors. And when there's a need, we're going to get intense and jump in. But really where we get a sense of ourself, of who we really love to be, is an accomplishment. So King Osophagus has changed. Maybe that headache has dulled a little bit, right? Because who he was in his 30s has now really changed. And he's tired of seeing all of these women who just bring in all these jewelries. And I don't know, I'm just assuming this, right? But I can imagine it, right? And all of a sudden in comes a woman who's different, who represents kindness, right? And even in the idea that she didn't take things from Haggai, that's going to be the first example where Esther doesn't just listen to older men. Now, she's respectful, she's honoring, right? She always comes with a sense of humility, she's kind, but she doesn't necessarily take the instruction of men because she works for God. So she submits in the areas where she needs to submit, and then in the other areas she shows a true strength in gentleness, in relationship building, in being gracious, and being kind. And that transforms into this king who's lived his life in accomplishment and hasn't accomplished all he wants. And now he's got one task before him, and she represents that to him. She represents the idea that he has changed as a man and as a king, and his accomplishment is now in having a wife, a partner, somebody to help support him and lift him up in those times when he needs to be lifted up. And that's what Esther enters into that chamber as. She is a breath of fresh air from God. God breathed into his life without him even knowing it. And when the right person, the right partner, the right woman, the right man comes into your life, that's what it feels like. God's breath coming in, and it's a change in every other environment and every other person that you've been into. So what does the king do? Well, he loves her more than any others. He respects her. He puts the crown on her head, and she is queen instead of Vashti. And then let's get to the key point of what happens next for Esther. Then the king made a great feast unto all the princes and his servants, and even Esther's feast. And he made a release of the provinces and gave gifts according to the state of the king. Even Esther's feast. This is a man who we first met, a young 35-year-old hot, handsome king on the throne, right? And he's throwing this huge party 7 days, drinking with his friends, and his wife is off with her friends, and he wants to bring her in as an object to parade around them. And here we sit, much later in his life, where time has passed, where he now has been shown what a woman of God, right? What a woman really means to him, what a woman represents to a man. And so when he chooses her, when he selects her, when he says, you are going to be my queen, he throws a party. Not a party separate from the women, not a party to show her off as an object, actually a party named after her, in her honor. That's right, Bruce, jump up. A party that shows his love and kindness and grace and respect to this woman who has changed his life. So today, let's celebrate Esther because it's her day. Queen Esther sits on the throne, and she shows us how hard it is to be a woman in the world of men. Happy Sunday. Congratulations, Queen Esther. You know, even in this story, even in the pages, you're rooting for her, aren't you? Because she's the type of woman that God shows us. And thank God, the Lord, who is the main character of the story, for making these stories just as relevant to us today as they were back then. So all of our stories for all of his glory. Happy Sunday. Chatting at Cheesman. Esther's feast. Esther's feast.